Hey, how's it going, everybody? Welcome into a brand new episode of Spencer Talks NASCAR. I'm your host, Spencer Urquhart, ready to get this thing going, talking all things Bristol. Going to review that crazy Bristol race, man. Still trying to wrap my mind around just how chaotic that ended up. Tires, the theme of that thing. Tire failures at a record rate for Bristol. Normally, Bristol, not a track where tires become a factor, but boy, were they on Sunday. My goodness, that was a wild race, one that I did not see coming, but got some of the top finishers right. I saw Brad Keselowski doing well. Denny Hamlin winning, not a huge surprise. We'll get into that here in just a minute, and just want to set the stage here for this episode. Going to be breaking down all things Bristol. Going to give my thoughts on the whole tire situation. Was it a good or bad race? And had a lot of comments from the drivers, had a lot of strong opinions on it, and rightfully so. That was a freaking crazy race. And then we'll power rank the top 10 Cup drivers as I see them, like we do each and every week here on Spencer Talks NASCAR. So, yeah, let's get right into it. All right. So, first thing I'd like to talk about was the Bristol chaos. Was it too chaotic, or was that what the fans want? And from going through different YouTube videos and just Twitter and general fan reaction, it seems like this was overall a very popular race despite all the chaos. There were obviously some haters that thought it was too much. And at first I was on that side of the fence, but the more I started reading about it, I feel like the more info you get about a topic, the more you become neutral. And so while I still feel like the race was pretty wild, probably too chaotic for my liking, there was a hidden beauty behind it, and that drivers really had to conserve tires. And I don't think it was a coincidence that the top three finishers were three of the most experienced drivers in the field, and Denny Hamlin, Martin Truex Jr., and Brad Keselowski. And speaking of experience, my driver, Kyle Busch, was doing really well, but he ended up being one of the victims of the tire situation, which Denny Hamlin, by the way, the winner, he was lucky that Kyle Busch blew the tire early when he did, because Denny Hamlin, as soon as Kyle Busch blew his and they threw the yellow, Denny Hamlin smacked the wall and blew a tire. But at that point, Hamlin didn't lose any track position. And then, of course, everyone pitted to get new tires at that point. So Denny Hamlin can thank Kyle Busch for that, because Kyle was running really good early, but unfortunately didn't transpire. And same with Ty Gibbs, he was running really well, won both stages. Ty Gibbs did. He was my long shot pick to win. Almost got it done, but didn't have quite enough at the end for those salty veterans. Hamlin and Truex were really duking it out there. I was thinking Truex might be able to steal it from him, but Truex, I think, was out of stuff at the end, where Hamlin did the best at saving it and won, which that's the thing that frustrates me with this. I mean, it was chaotic, one, and two, it just seemed to me that a lot of drivers, yeah, it was an art to saving the tires, but some drivers just had pretty much no chance. Because to think, if you're a talented driver, not as good of equipment, for example, Kyle Busch, let's be real, RCR's equipment, not on the level of Joe Gibbs Racing. If you were putting these cars or these drivers head to head in neutral equipment, I mean, I know that's a big part of the sport. It's a team sport. It's more than just the driver. I get that. But as fans, we like to see the drivers shine. And so if we were just going up against each other, neutral equipment, who would do the best? I don't know if it would have necessarily been Hamlin and Truex. I think they would have definitely been among the leaders for sure. They're two of the most experienced, but they also had the best equipment. Let's be real. Joe Gibbs Racing, Toyota, killing it right now on short tracks. That's 2 weeks in a row JGR dominates on the short track. So, yeah, I know the tire wear was a thing, and Brad Keselowski, he did a well of a job. I know RFK's equipment isn't quite on the level of JGR, but yet he almost won it. If it wasn't for those two JGR cars, he would have won it. So shout out to Brad Keselowski for running a really good race. Josh Berry did well and not as good of equipment. McDowell was doing pretty good there for a minute. John Hunter Nemechek got a 6th place finish. So Doesn't necessarily have to be one of the big teams, but let's be real. Bowman and Larson, Hendrick cars finished 4th and 5th. So 4 of the top 5 were still Gibbs and Hendrick, despite all the chaos. So I don't know. That's just my thought. I don't see this race going down in history in a good way. I see it definitely going down in history, but I feel like it's going to be remembered just as a freaking crazy blowing tires fest. Kind of like that Indy race from a few years ago. Not Indy car, it was a race at Indy, a NASCAR race at Indianapolis a few years back where the tires were just blowing tires left and right. There was a concern that they might run out of tires yesterday. I just read the statement from NASCAR. They said that they ended up going back to the same amount from the fall race, which I think was just like one extra set that they needed yesterday. But anyway, let's get into the next topic. Did NASCAR sabotage the drivers with all this? Because I don't think any of the drivers were expecting this. I really don't. I think these drivers really got thrown for a loop. I mean, Denny Hamlin even said it, the eventual winner. He said it during the race that this is the worst tire race that I've seen since that Indianapolis race. And he wasn't lying. It ended up being really bad. It got a little better in the second half. In the first half of the race, there were so many damn cautions. The leaders weren't even being able to put anyone a lap down. I was like, damn. It was like still 30 cars in the lead lap, like halfway through. Crazy thing about Kyle Busch, he got back on the lead lap. He was in 31st, then worked his way all the way back to like 12th or something. I was like, damn, he's going to actually salvage a good finish out of this. And then his pit crew screws him over. Story of Kyle Busch's season. Just pitiful stuff by Richard Childress Racing. I am done with RCR, man. I'm always be a Kyle Busch fan, but RCR, they have not done right by him this year with the piss poor pit crews. But anyway, back to did NASCAR sabotage the drivers? I kind of think they did because these drivers were not expecting this. They really had to adapt and adjust. So hats off to them for doing so. But I can see where guys were just straight up pissed off after this. They Kyle Busch and William Byron afterwards. William Byron, him and Tyler Reddick got caught up in the early incidents. They didn't even really get any sort of race going positively to where Kyle Busch and William Byron, they just left immediately, did not take questions. I don't blame them. I'd have been pissed off if I was in their shoes. So interesting how it all went down. Just kind of wrong, though, to me, how NASCAR just did that. I mean, I know it's entertaining. It was pretty entertaining to see guys like, oh, and another flat tire. Oh my God, he's got a flat. Oh no, Kyle Busch going backwards. Oh no, Ty Gibbs has a flat. Just seeing all this was freaking nuts on TV. But another thing that annoys me as a fan, I like to keep. I like to know who's really running well and who's not. And with this, it was like, who were really the contenders? I mean, the cream rose at the top of them with Hamlin and Truex battling out, but then they eventually got some cars. They started lapping cars after a while, but it's just, I don't know. It was just such a weird race. It just kind of, it was one that I guess I'm too much of a traditional fan. I know a lot of these new hip NASCAR fans, they love it when it's all chaotic and stuff, but I still just like sometimes just a good regular race. I admit Phoenix was pretty bleh last week. I feel like Las Vegas was a good compromise. I feel like most people would probably be like, oh, Las Vegas, that was a mid-race. Kyle Larson led pretty much all the laps, but that was just a very fair race. I had no issues with that race. Phoenix to me was just, I just didn't like it because it seemed so hard to pass. Vegas, though, if it was like Tyler Reddick was right there with Kyle Larson. I still think the intermediate package for next gen is way better than the short track. They just really went crazy with the tire stuff, and it really threw the drivers for a loop. But I guess to tie it all together, was it a good race? I mean, it's whatever. I don't particularly think it was a good race, but I'm not going to act like it was the worst thing ever because it was definitely interesting to watch all that, but it just was a bit kind of got me kind of, woo, man, just like too much going on. But anyway, as far as was it better than the usual next gen short track racing? Probably. The usual next gen short track racing, let's be real, is awful. It's so boring. They just run in a line, no one passes. So at least this was a little step up over that, but it wasn't good racing though. I mean, they have freaking tires blowing left and right, especially early on. Like toward the end, it wasn't as bad. It's just the early part. I feel like no one was prepared for that. If drivers would have known this more going in, they probably would have just from the start been more conscious of it and not run so hard early on. So that's just my take on it. They got to find a happy medium with this. Yeah, you don't want to go back to the Bristol Fall race from last year where JGR led basically every lap and it wasn't entertaining because nobody could pass. I get that. You don't want to go back to that. But I mean, even with this crap, I mean, JGR still dominated. So they've got to figure something out. Maybe it's the increase in the horsepower. I know that's been a big topic of conversation over the past few weeks. Maybe they'll actually do that instead of having all these tires blow out. But I would think with more of horsepower, that would probably lead to more tire blowouts, but they could maybe build the tires a little differently. I don't know. I'm not an expert on all that stuff. I'm just a fan that likes to watch the cars go around. So let's get into the results here real quick. I'm going to break it down. Who did well, who didn't. Denny Hamlin won, of course. We know that. And Martin Truex second. That was a pretty good battle there at the end. Those two really were duking it out there. And Brad Keselowski looked like maybe he would have a chance, but his car just wasn't quite as strong as those two Toyotas. Alex Bowman really snuck up on me. I didn't even notice that he got a top 5 until just now because he wasn't really – I mean, he got no stage points. He must have made a good mad dash and did really well at saving his tires. This kind of racing really benefited guys that came up from, like, the dirt racing backgrounds or short track backgrounds, kind of like Josh Berry. You know, he got a solid 12th place finish there. And then Bowman – he's one of those kind of guys, one of those old school type racers. So good to see him do well. That was a much needed top 5 for Alex Bowman. Same with John Hunter Nemechek. That 6th place finish was huge for him. Needed a good run there and did really well in both stages. I got to say, JHN will be a name to watch moving forward at these short tracks. He's a guy that did really well in Xfinity here last year. And so I don't think that was a fluke. I think JHN is on the rise there. And Chase Elliott got a solid top 10, kind of like Bowman, didn't do much in the stages, but he's just been kind of like the inconvenient truth kind of driver. It's like he hadn't been that special, but it's just, let's be real, man, he's still in the mix. So they're still missing a little bit of speed, but I think they're getting there. I think Chase Elliott will find it eventually. And looking at, wow, only 5 finished on the lead lap. That's wild. Yeah, that race went from they had 30 on the lead lap to only 5. What a crazy freaking race. That I gotta say, we're talking just what's the craziest NASCAR race you've ever witnessed? This may have been it. I gotta admit, if that's what NASCAR was going for, well, congratulations, y'all win. That was as chaotic as it gets. My gosh. And Ty Gibbs and Christopher Bell round out the top 10. The JGR, all 4 of their cars getting the top 10, and rightfully so. They dominated. I mean, Gibbs and Hamlin led over half the laps between the two of them. So good to see a lot of other different leaders, though. I mean, Truex led a good amount, and then let's see, Bell, all the freaking JGR cars. I mean, Josh Berry, he had his little moment. You know, he started off good, led 25 laps. That was good to see. Brian Blaney led a few there. It looks like his race just went to hell in a handbasket. He started off pretty good, but then he had issues. Ended up working his way back up to 16th. Ross Chastain started near the back, got a top 15. Preece and Briscoe right behind Berry. So pretty good day for Stewart Haas. I think Noah Gregson's the only one that struggled out of there, guys. Daniel Suarez kind of quiet, but still managed the top 20. Let's see the rest of it here. Kaz Grala got a top 20. Good stuff by the rookie there. Eric Jones, a little disappointing. I thought he'd do better than JHN, but JHN the better of the Legacy Motor Club cars. Corey LaJoie, Joey Logano. Logano did pretty good at one point. He had finished 3rd in the 2nd stage, but then he fizzled out toward the end. The Dinger, AJ Allmendinger kind of met in the 2 RCR cars. Forgettable days. Once again, RCR in the toilet right now. Terrible start to 2024 for both Austin Dillon and Kyle Busch. I don't know. What is Austin Dillon doing at this point? I mean, at least Kyle Busch competes. Austin Dillon is like, what are you doing, bro? You might as well just give that seat up to Austin Hill or Jesse Love. I mean, Austin Dillon's a disaster, man. That's another thing that's probably hurting Kyle Busch. Like I said last week, I guarantee he didn't get any useful information out of his teammate. Austin Dillon, what a clown show. But anyway, Carson Hocevar, the rookie, thought he might do a little better. Didn't do that great. Bubba Wallace had finished top 10 in the stage 2, but then faded at the end. He's had kind of a rough patch recently after a strong first 2 races. Tyler Reddick, he got taken out early. His race was pretty much over before it started. Same with the rest of these guys there. William Byron was the really bad luck case here. He got basically, I think it was like lap 2 or something. He got in an incident and just, I mean, he was 2 laps down right from jump and then just could never get going. So, and then Zane Smith, what an awful start to his rookie season. He was my rookie of the year pick, but I hate to change my pick already, but he has looked way off to start this season. Like I mentioned last week, that's an expansion team there. That's 71, and they're sure looking like an expansion team. My gosh, they have been awful to start this season. An engine failure, man. They just, man. I think Zane Smith, it's safe to say he'll be itching to get into legit Trackhouse equipment. But if he keeps stinking it up with this deal, will Trackhouse even take him? I mean, Suarez has held his own. Chastain's their franchise driver. Then Shane Van Gisbergen, who, by the way, will be making his first Cup start this week at Coda, is probably next in line over there to get a 3rd seat. So, although, I mean, Zane Smith, he's full-time, though, and it's a Trackhouse aligned car. So I think they'll eventually get it together. But so far, a very forgettable start to Zane Smith's rookie season. All right, y'all. So we're now going to go over the Cup point standings here before we discuss our power rankings. So looking at it here, Kyle Larson and Martin Truex Jr. tied at 185 for the points lead. Larson, I would think it's a tiebreaker though, since he has a win on the season. But wow, Martin Truex Jr., I gotta say, didn't expect him to get off to this strong of a start. He has proven me dead wrong so far to start this season. I thought he'd have kind of a down year this year. I thought he'd be the weak link of JGR, but so far not the case. There haven't been any weak links on JGR. That team has been 4 strong Toyotas, man. Ty Gibbs in 3rd. Him and Truex, they don't have wins, but they're the 2 highest in points of the JGR cars. Ty Gibbs, he's going to get a win sooner rather than later. That kid is really on a roll right now. Ryan Blaney was the points leader, dropped to 4th, but, not bad. Not a bad start for him, obviously. I mean, he's freaking really close to the points lead, so yeah, he's going to keep that going. The thing I am concerned about, though, is Team Penske's performance as a whole, because Blaney, like I said last week, he's been freaking carrying the banner for that team, and his teammates Austin Cindric and Joey Logano have done anything but carry the banner. They have really struggled to start this season. So kind of like the Kyle Busch thing, if your teammates are struggling, it kind of hurts you because you don't have much useful information to get from them. Where JGR, I mean, all 4 of their guys are rolling, so they can all compare notes, and they're all doing really well. So that definitely is a plus when you have teammates that are also doing well. So Hendrick Motorsports off to a good start, though. Chase Elliott, not quite as fast as Larson and Byron, but getting quality results nonetheless. So 6th in the points, not bad. Denny Hamlin jumps up to 5th after the big win in the Food City 500. Ross Chastain still a respectable 7th. Christopher Bell steadily climbing the ladder up to 8th after a slow start through 3 races. Tyler Reddick drops a little bit. Same with William Byron. They both had bad weeks, but definitely no concern there. I would not panic about either of them. They're both very solid, as I'll talk about in the power rankings. Daniel Suarez, he's the lowest in the standings among drivers with a win. Still, though, in strong position to make the playoffs. And there are top 16. Our bubble drivers here, beginning with Alex Bowman. That top 5's really helped get him in a good points position. And we've got a big cluster, 13th through 16th. Brad Keselowski, Chris Buescher, both RFK cars in the playoffs right now, as well as John Hunter Nemechek. He's a big riser, up 6 spots. And then Kyle Busch still hanging on to a playoff spot, but barely. He is now 16th. Wow. And he was the points leader after 2 races. Just goes to show how much he has struggled recently with RCR. And then there's a decent little gap after him. Michael McDowell, here's the playoff cut line through 5 races. Michael McDowell, 12 points out of 16th. And then Bubba Wallace 15 behind him and Chase Briscoe. And then you see the rest of the standings there. Eric Jones rounding out the top 20. So, yeah, I mean, so far, pretty standard stuff. Nobody too surprising up there. John Hunter Nemechek doing pretty well. Oh, as far as guys not doing as well as we thought, yeah, Joey Logano, my goodness. 26th. He went up 4 spots. Him and Josh Berry did a little better than they had been, but still just not the kind of start you want if you're a guy like Joey Logano. And then Noah Gragson, he had been really building up momentum. He had a bad race, so it dropped him 6 spots. He'd be better if it wasn't for that penalty, but that penalty was a killer. Him and Ryan Preece buried down here. And then I mentioned Austin Dillon, how bad he was doing as he had a top 35. Zane Smith, the lowest of the 35 full-time drivers here. But yeah, if you're not in the top 30 right now, your season is, I know it's only 5 races in. Other than Noah Gragson, I'll make an exception for him because of the penalty. He's had a lot better pace than his point standing indicates. But basically, to me, if you're any of these 5 drivers, I'll even say Austin Dillon, Harrison Burton. Well, I'm not really going to throw Kaz Grala in there. Ryan Preece. I mean, it's really Zane Smith, Ryan Preece, Harrison Burton, and Austin Dillon, man. If you're either of those 4, like, I'm panicking, man. Those teams need to make major swings. Ty Gilliland also not to a great start, but I feel like a lot of that's been kind of bad luck. Justin Haley's with a team that wasn't really expected to contend. Berry and Logano, they're doing a little better lately, so I wouldn't say it's on the panic yet. But I feel like those other 5, they need to make some big changes there, although none of those guys had super high expectations heading into this season. So anyway, that's the look at the point standing. Let's now go over the power rankings here before we sign off on Spencer Talks NASCAR. Here we go, y'all. The top 3 actually remain the same. Denny Hamlin moves up 1 as William Byron drops 1. Ty Gibbs up to 6. He's up 2 spots. Martin Truex Jr. up 3 spots to 7th. Ross Chastain and Tyler Reddick both drop a couple of spots. And then Kyle Busch, I kept him in there. I almost took him out considering how terrible he's been lately, but maybe it's the homer in me that I'm a fan is, but I just couldn't quite take him out of the top 10. And here's why. We're going to go 10-1. I'm keeping Kyle Busch in there because outside of Phoenix, what races has he not had speed at? Like, he's had speed at every other race. So even last week, I know on Sunday at Bristol, he had a bad race overall, but he had speed. He was up front with freaking Denny Hamlin early in the race before the tire incident, and then he got back on the lead lap, worked his way back nearly into the top 10 before the pit crew screwed him over. So outside of Phoenix, that race, he was just genuinely slow. All the other, I mean, the first 2 weeks, he almost won Atlanta. He had a great car at Daytona. Vegas, he had a really good car. He just got sabotaged by the pit crew. And then at Bristol, he's had 4 to 5 weeks. He's had top 5 speed. So speed is not the issue right now with Kyle Busch. It's the stuff around him. It's the pit crew, really. I mean, the pit crew there is a walking disaster. I mean, week after week, it's just always some crap, man. So I'm keeping him in the top 10 for now, but if they strike again at COTA, because these power rankings, it is all the drivers, but teams are factored into these things. If a team keeps consistently failing a driver, well, I'm going to have to drop the driver down, because if their team around them is not good, then that's going to hurt the driver. So going to keep Kyle in here for now, but they have got to start finishing races better, because they're almost out of the playoffs now, down to 16th in points. So maybe if you want to be in the top 10 of these power rankings, you've got to be top 16. You've got to be in position to make the playoffs. I mean, we're 5 races in now. You can't just keep using the excuse, oh, it's early. I mean, 5 races, that's a good amount of data on a variety of tracks. So number 9, Tyler Reddick. Definitely still feel like he's a top 10 driver. Just a bad luck start in a lot of these races. When he has finished races, he's done really good. I mean, the runner up at Vegas, good run in Phoenix. I mean, Reddick he's got championship speed. I am not sleeping on Tyler Reddick. I only got him 9th right now because of all these other guys running good, but 23-11, they're just missing a little bit. They're kind of like with Kyle Busch, have some pit crew problems, but they can get that stuff squared away by the second half, Tyler Reddick's going to be dangerous. And Coda's a really good back for him. Same for Kyle Busch. I feel like both of them could move up the ranks with good runs at Coda, especially Reddick. Reddick's won there before. He's really good on road courses. So I believe he won the Coda race last year. So he'll have a chance to climb back up the ranks. Number 8, Ross Chastain, another former Coda winner, I believe. He's down a couple spots, though. He's just been kind of, he hadn't been bad, but hadn't really made much noise the past couple weeks. Thought he'd do better at Phoenix, and he kind of struggled. Ended up with a pretty good finish, though, and in this week, kind of survived the chaos to get a 15th type thing. So not bad, not a bad start. And he's kept his nose clean, hadn't made any new enemies, so that's good. Overall, pretty decent start for Ross. So I'll keep him in the top 10 as long as he keeps running pretty good. Needs to get a little better speed, though. He needs to get the speed up so he can rack up some wins here. Because, I mean, he's a championship contender, so got to do a little bit better moving forward. But not bad. Number 7, Martin Truex Jr. He is tied for the points lead. I'm probably a little lower on him than most. But he hadn't won a race yet. He's come close. He's come close now the past 2 weeks. Finished runner-up to his teammates, but hey, MTJ, man, just hell of a start. He's aged like fine wine throughout his career. Started off his first few years with DEI, not anything special. Then goes to Michael Waltrip Racing, has the controversy, then gets let go from there, and revitalizes himself at Furniture Row, and is now with the elite Joe Gibbs Racing squad. That's just, I mean, they've got all their drivers in the top 7 here. I mean, what else can I say? I mean, these guys are just, they're getting the results, man, week in and week out. Number 6, Ty Gibbs, also trending up 2 spots. He has come so close to winning, and I think he's good on road courses, like maybe Coda. I mean, they've got some other guys. I mean, Reddick, the name that comes to mind there. I mean, Chase Elliott, he's a really good road course racer. He's on the, just missed it, by the way, our honorable mention, forgot to mention them. Chase Elliott, Daniel Suarez, and the 2 RFK cars, Brad Keselowski and Chris Buescher, almost put Brad over KB after Brad's really impressive run at Bristol. But, I mean, Chris Buescher also really good, so would have felt bad leaving out one of those two. I feel like they're both so close. But kept Kyle Busch in for now. But if Kyle Busch doesn't start doing better, he will find himself on the outside looking in of these rankings. So, yeah, Ty Gibbs, though, he's going to get that first win here real soon. Not sure when, but I'm going to say within the first 10 races. I think he's going to break through here within the next month or two. All right, number 5, William Byron. He is down a spot after the horrendous Bristol run. Had him in best bets. He was someone that I thought was going to prove people wrong at Bristol. He wasn't getting much love, and we'll never really know what would have happened. I mean, he just had a really bad luck. I guess I jinxed him by recommending him for best bets. Although my best bets have been pretty solid this year. I mean, he was my outright Daytona 500 pick, and he won that thing. So definitely can't complain about having bad luck this year with betting. But anyway, as far as Byron's performance, I mean, he's still one of the elite drivers. Just, had to drop him a tad in the ranks after what was basically a no-show week. But he'll be back sooner rather than later among the leaders, I'm sure. Number 4, Denny Hamlin, up 1 after his big win at Bristol. Thought about moving him up over Christopher Bell, but I still feel like Christopher Bell's the best JGR car right now overall. It's so close, though. I mean, they're basically tied. I mean, C. Bell ran up front a lot. He didn't do quite as good a job of saving his tires, but I mean, he was so good at Phoenix, got that dominant win. As a whole, Hamlin's actually had a slightly better start to the year, but when you consider how good C. Bell was last year, especially down the stretch, I'll still give him the edge. He comes in at number 3, Christopher Bell. He was my pick to win at Bristol. Had an okay day, but not quite as good as his teammates. Number 2, Ryan Blaney. I'm going to keep Blaney at 2, even though he didn't do quite as well at Bristol as he could have. But, I mean, still a respectable finish. Got like a 16th. He had a lot of issues. He was really pissed off after the race. He was going off about how crazy that race was, and I understood his frustration. I mean, that was just such a crazy, chaotic race. I couldn't imagine being a driver in that. That was just, whew, man, hold on for dear life. That was crazy. But I mean, he survived it. That's one thing with Ryan Blaney. Even when adversity strikes, he usually still salvages decent finishes out of what a lot of drivers. I mean, let's be real. I mean, Kyle Busch kind of squandered it. But I mean, again, his pit crew has a lot to blame for that. But Ryan Blaney's team as a whole has been really strong. His pit crew is one of the best in the business. They were the featured pit crew this week on Fox when they featured a pit crew. I don't think Kyle Busch's pit crew is getting featured anytime soon. Ryan Blaney's, though, was the featured pit crew. So shout out to them. Shout out to Blaney, the defending champ, still among the elite drivers. And Kyle Larson, number one, didn't make a whole lot of noise at Bristol. Led some laps early, ended up with a solid fifth place finish. So managed to survive this chaotic day. He was kind of on the fence about it. I mean, he wasn't thrilled about it, but he did admit that it was kind of an interesting deal. It really tested the driver's willpower and such. So, yeah, can't argue with it. I mean, Kyle Larson, he's a racer, and he managed to, whatever tough cars get dealt, the most talented drivers tend to rise to the occasion, and Kyle Larson definitely checks that bill. He's a great road course racer, so keep an eye on him at COTA, as well as Christopher Bell. He's a really good road racer. So I don't think any of them have won at COTA. I think it's been 3 years at COTA now. I think the 3 COTA winners are Chase Elliott, Ross Chastain, and Tyler Reddick. So we'll see if we have a new COTA winner this year. But yeah, we'll have more on that later in the week. We'll preview the Texas Grand Prix at Circuit of the Americas. And yeah, we'll be back later this week to do all that. Give some best bets as well. Going to go over the odds. Got Keselowski top 3. Cashed that, even though the rest of the picks didn't pan out. The good thing with NASCAR betting, most of the odds are long enough to where as long as you can just cash 1 or 2 of them, you still have a green week. So shout out Brad Keselowski for getting that top 3 finish. But anyway, there's been another episode in the books. We'll be back with the new one later this week. This has been Spencer Urquhart with Spencer Talks NASCAR. See y'all in the next video. Peace out.